Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so we're going to do something totally different today. We're taking 15 classic children's stories, everything from The Ugly Duckling to The Golden Goose, and we're re-examining them. Not as cute little bedtime rhymes, but as profound, completely timeless psychological case studies for adults. Seriously, when you strip away the talking animals and the fairy dust, what you're actually left with is an absolute masterclass on human nature. It's packed with behavioral strategies that are incredibly relevant to our modern lives.
To make sense of all this, we've grouped these tales into four main themes: the price of overconfidence, brains over brawn, the karma of kindness, and navigating trust, deceit, and greed. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The price of overconfidence and the dangers of unchecked ego.
To kick us off, we have this perfect quote: "Proud people can't survive for long." This comes straight from the classic Hare and Tortoise story, and it is a harsh but entirely true summary of what happens when hubris takes the wheel.
Just look at the wildly different strategies here. You've got the hare, who is relying purely on sheer arrogant talent, right? He's so fast, he literally takes a nap in the middle of a race because he thinks he's completely untouchable. But the tortoise? He relies on slow, steady consistency. He just quietly tiptoes right past his sleeping opponent, proving that unchecked ego is always going to lose to disciplined consistency.
We actually see a super similar and fatal pattern with the gingerbread man. Let's call this escalating evasion. He outruns the bakers, then a pig, a cow, and a horse, and he's constantly taunting them along the way. But this winning streak builds up this incredibly dangerous false sense of invincibility. So when he gets to a river, he's so blinded by his own hype that he's more afraid of getting his feet soggy than he is of a known predator. He trusts a fox, and boom, he's immediately eaten. His ego was literally his downfall.
Then you have a slightly different flavor of unchecked ego with Goldilocks: sheer entitlement. Look at her systematic intrusion into a total stranger's house. She eats a baby's food, physically breaks their furniture, and then just decides to take a nap in their bed. It is a complete disregard for boundaries. And just like the hare, the reality check is severe. The owners come back, her entitlement shatters, and she's forced to flee in absolute terror.
But what happens when overconfidence fails right out of the gate? Well, it triggers instant ego protection. Picture a hungry fox jumping for some high-hanging grapes, but he just can't reach them. Instead of admitting he has a physical limitation or, finding a tool to help, he just walks away telling himself, those grapes are probably sour anyway. It's a textbook defense mechanism. He devalues the goal just to protect his fragile ego, instead of actually putting in the work.
Moving right along to Section 2. Brains over brawn, strategic problem solving.
This brings us to a super crucial piece of advice. Wisdom helps during difficult times. Think about the cap seller. He wakes up from a nap to find his basket of red caps totally empty and a whole bunch of monkeys up in the tree wearing them. Now, obviously, he can't fight a whole troop of monkeys, so he observes them instead. He notices they're imitating his every move. Using strategic imitation, he just throws his own cap down on the ground, and what do you know? The mimicking monkeys do the exact same thing. He collects his inventory, and he leaves safely.
We see another absolutely brilliant example of problem solving with the clever crow. It's a hot day, he finds water in a jug, but the neck is too narrow and the jug is way too heavy to tip over. Instead of using brute force or just giving up, he alters the fluid dynamics of his environment. He patiently drops heavy pebbles into the jug, one by one, displacing the water until it rises all the way to the top. I mean, that is just an incredible display of applied physics.
And of course, this brings us to the Three Little Pigs, which is a masterclass in escalating defensive tactics. The first two pigs take the easy route, straw and sticks, and their houses are effortlessly blown down by the big bad wolf. But that third pig, he uses wisdom without weapons. He puts in the hard work to build with strong bricks, which completely withstands the wolf. But he doesn't even stop there. He anticipates the enemy's next move. When the wolf tries to come down the chimney, the pig has a boiling pot of water waiting right at the bottom, permanently neutralizing the threat. That is strategic foresight at its absolute finest.
Okay, on to our third theme, the karma of kindness. Reciprocal altruism in action. The age-old moral, a friend in need is a friend indeed, really anchors this section. It teaches us that seemingly insignificant acts of mercy, especially those granted when you have the upper hand, can yield massive, life-saving returns when you find yourself at a deficit later on.
When you look at reciprocal altruism, the initial investment is almost always incredibly small, but the payout, it's astronomical. A mighty lion decides to spare a tiny mouse that woke him up.
Later, when that exact lion is trapped in a hunter's net, it's the little mouse who chews through the ropes to save him. Same thing with the dove, drops a simple leaf to save a drowning ant. Weeks later, that same ant spots a hunter aiming a gun at the dove, bites the hunter's heel, and completely ruins the shot. Kindness isn't just moral, it's a highly strategic, life-saving investment.
A diamond doesn't know its worth till it's polished. This beautifully mirrors the internal journey of the ugly duckling. Remember, he's mocked and abandoned just for looking different. But during a freezing snowstorm, a kind woodcutter saves him, taking him home to keep him warm. That one act of grace allows the duckling to survive. Years later, he approaches a wedge of beautiful swans, fully expecting to be mocked again, but instead they welcome him. They tell him to look at his reflection, and he realizes he was never an ugly duck, he was a handsome swan the whole time. The kindness of that woodcutter allowed him to survive long enough to actually discover his true worth.
Finally, let's explore the darkest, most cautionary cluster of this explainer. Section 4, Trust, Deceit, and Greed. We're looking at this brutal lesson. One bad turn deserves another. It perfectly encapsulates what happens when trust is broken just for the sake of a cruel joke, and introduces the petty, tit-for-tat rivalry of the fox and the stork.
See, manipulation breeds immediate, mirrored revenge. The fox maliciously serves soup to the stork in this super shallow dish, laughing while the stork's long bill renders her completely helpless and hungry. But wait just a week later. The stork invites the fox over and serves this fantastic meal locked inside a narrow pitcher. Now it's the thick-snouted fox who can only lick the outside of the glass. The lesson is harsh, but so clear. If you weaponize deceit, you should fully expect that exact same deceit to be used against you.
And this overarching dynamic constantly pits calculating predators against naive targets. You have the big bad wolf putting on a disguise to trick Little Red Riding Hood. You've got another ungrateful wolf who gets a bone stuck in his throat, begs a crane to pull it out, and then violently refuses to pay the reward he promised. Or the sick lion, feigning illness just to lure well-wishing animals into his cave to eat them. Dark nature is absolutely full of bad actors waiting to exploit good intentions.
But listen, you can survive if you observe analytically. Let's look closer at that sick lion. While all the naive animals rush inside to hear his so-called last will, a clever fox stays at a highly respectful distance. He just observes the data. He notices footprints entering the cave, but absolutely zero footprints coming out. By paying attention to the hard evidence rather than falling into the emotional trap, he literally saves his own life.
Ultimately, if you let the darker angels of your nature win, specifically unchecked greed, it leaves you with exactly this number, 0. That's exactly what a poor farmer and his wife had left after their impatience got the better of them. They owned a magical goose that laid one solid golden egg every single morning. I mean, they were becoming rich, but they just couldn't wait. They wanted all the gold at once. So they killed their greatest asset, cut the goose open, and found it was completely normal inside. By chasing everything right now, they destroyed their only real source of wealth and ended up with absolutely nothing.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to look back at these incredibly potent behavioral strategies. Ask yourself, in your career, your relationships, your financial goals, which animal archetype are you actually embodying right now? Are you the overconfident hare? Are you the strategic third little pig? Or are you the impatient farmer destroying your own golden goose? The wisdom has been hiding in plain sight since we were kids. Now, it's entirely up to you to decide how you're going to use it.